What's up, YouTubers, and welcome back to Tony the Technician's channel. And today we're going to go over something that a lot of people don't quite understand when they're first getting into the automotive field or into anything that deals with fasteners. And that is, what should they buy? 6-point, 12-point, spline drive. Does spline drive suck? Does 12 points suck? They all have their application, and that's what we're going to go over today. I'm going to kind of show you the differences and how each one can actually be pretty handy in a lot of different situations. But I hope you guys enjoy it. If you do, please make sure to hit that thumbs up, leave a comment down below, and as always, subscribe if you're not a subscriber. Thank you guys. So what we have here is a few different varieties of 6-point sockets, 6-point or 12-point sockets, and spline drive sockets, as well as 6, 12, and spline drive wrenches as well. And I'm going to be using those as examples throughout this video. I also have these power built sets, which are pretty cheap from like AutoZone, I believe it is. This is their spline drive design and their anti-slip 6-point design. Now, a lot of different manufacturers make sets similar to this, and if you're a person that hasn't really used a whole lot of spline drive or 12-point sockets, now if they didn't work out well for you, you need to go back and think, was it a quality set or was it a cheaper set? Because the tolerances are going to vary depending on the manufacturer and how much time they spent on the design. So I'm going to pull a couple out of here and use them as examples with these others, and I hope you guys enjoy. So we're going to start out with just kind of going over the 3 different types, and first is going to be your most commonly used socket, which is your standard 6-point. Now, the reason a lot of professionals and do-it-yourselfers prefer a 6-point is because all sides are covering that 6-point fastener. So you're covering more surface area and you take less of a chance of rounding that fastener off because you have a good surface area with that socket. Now, 12-point sockets, they are designed to work with both 6 and 12-point fasteners, but with the 12-point, you're going to have less surface area of the socket on the head of the fastener, which can cause you to round off the head of the fastener if you're not careful. But they can be used with both. And in the automotive field, you will come across situations where you need 12-point sockets, such as on some vehicles, manufacturers use a 12-point fastener on their drive shaft where it meets the differential or the pinion gear. And as well as my oil pan on my small block Chevy, it also has 12-point fasteners. So yes, some people can definitely get by a majority of the time without 12-point sockets, but if you're in the automotive field, I really do believe that you're going to come across those situations where you need the 12-point sockets. Then you have the spline drive. Now, a lot of people don't care for spline drive, but you also need to go back. How much of experience or how many times have you really used a spline drive, and what was the quality of that spline drive socket? Now, these are extremely cheap, but I've actually found out that these have a good tolerance on fasteners. The good thing about spline drive is they do differ from 12-point, they do look similar, but the teeth are exaggerated on the spline drive. So when you get a fastener in there, I know you won't be able to tell very well on this socket, but the corners of the fastener, the head of the fastener, actually sit pretty deep in these teeth of the socket. So you can apply a good amount of torque without rounding off the fastener, where it's much more likely with the 12-point. So depending on the quality of your spline drive sockets or wrenches, they can actually be very helpful. Also, some other pros of the spline drive is it works with not just 6, 12, square, E-torques or torques, and rounded off fasteners, rusty fasteners, and the rounded off fasteners, usually the spline drive company or whoever manufactured the sockets will tell you they're good for up to 30% rounded off fasteners. So spline drive can actually be really helpful, but it also depends on the quality of it. That was all 10mm, except for this one. With the spline drive, you kind of get a universal fit. It works for both 9/16 and 14, and that's the way it is for all of these. You can kind of see the differences. And they actually, I thought, it might be really loose on one or kind of loose on the other one and tight on the other. But this is a 9/16 and this is for 9/16 and 14, and it actually has a really tight tolerance to it. So I really find these really handy, especially when you're in the automotive field. Say you don't want to go through and buy a whole crap ton of 12-point sockets. Maybe you come across the situation where you only need that one size 12-point socket. Well, then you can just get that, or you could get, not saying power built if you're a professional, but a good small set of spline drive sockets would actually be very handy to have in your toolbox, I believe. That's my thoughts on 12-point and spline drive. I think they're both useful, just depending on how much money you want to spend and which way you want to go. But that's up to you guys. I'm not trying to sway you in a certain direction, just kind of giving you my opinion. You also will come across designs like this. This is also power built. It's a Xeon socket or something like that. They call this their anti-slip for those rounded fasteners. And basically what they've done here is a standard 6-point socket, but if you look deep on the flat part of the socket, you will see they've cut another edge in there. So they do kind of have extra teeth. So let's say this fastener was worn and it came out of the main point of the socket. They're hoping that this smaller tooth over here will tend to grab it and hold it, allowing you to get that worn fastener out. And there's a lot of different manufacturers that have similar designs, and some really work well, some not too much. I haven't really had too much experience using these, haven't really had to. So before we move on to the wrenches, I just want to kind of show you that if you're thinking about getting a certain socket set, I would first start off with your 6-point, because that's going to be your most used one, whether you're going chrome or impact grade. Start out with your standard 6-point. It's going to be the best bet without rounding off fasteners, and also get one with a tight tolerance. That also kind of means that you're going to be spending a little bit more money on your sockets, but you want something with a good tolerance. Now when this says 13 millimeter, now it's not going to be exactly 13. It's going to be slightly over for those fasteners that have worn or have a undercoating on them, or rust buildup, corrosion, stuff like that. So they're always going to have just a small amount of play to them, but not so much to where you're going to round off a good fastener. Like you can see here, you can get 6-point in shallow and deep, 12-point in shallow and deep. This is Silver Eagle. This is Pittsburgh 12-point, because I don't find myself using a lot of 12-point sockets. So I just got a cheap set just because I don't need to spend a lot of money on something that I'm not going to really use all that often. Then you have your gear wrench and Matco, just 6-point sockets where they have the rounded corners, which tend to grab fasteners a little bit better. It's a good design to have in your 6-point socket. And then you can also get impact grade 12 points as well, and that comes in handy as well. But if you're just starting out, focus on your 6-point chrome and impact grade sockets. Now, if you guys have any questions about any of this, please let me know, and I'd be glad to give you my input on it. And if you're a person that's dealt a lot with 6-point, 12-point, or spline drive, really, let me know what your thoughts are on spline drive and what you really prefer. Would you rather just have a 12-point and then specific sockets for those torques and stuff, or would you prefer a spline drive? Me, I actually like using spline drive. So what we're looking at here, this is the Tecton brand, but this is your basic design for your average combination wrench. And that is your normal box end, or open end I mean, and your standard 12-point box end. And that's what a majority of the combination wrenches are going to be. Now, in the rare occasion, you can find some manufacturers that make a 6-point combination wrench, but it's not very common. Then you have the Matco, and many other designs do this as well. This is your standard combination wrench, but on the box end, it is actually a spline drive design compared to the standard 12-point. And like I stated, I actually find these very, very handy. Now, we're not going to get into the Matco ratcheting wrenches because I despise mine because they haven't worked since I got them. But when it comes to your long double box end or anything like that, most of the time they're going to be of this design, and that is the spline drive. Whether you go with Mountain, Easy Red, Gear Wrench, many different manufacturers make these long double box end wrenches. And a majority of the time, they're going to be spline drive because you don't want to buy 3 different sets, whether you want to get a 6-point set, a 12-point set, and a spline drive. Nobody wants to spend that much money on the extra long double box ends. So they make a majority of them spline drive so you can use them on all different types of fasteners. Tekton does make the 6-point double box end ratcheting wrenches, and they're not a bad price. An entire set is around $100 to $120, so really not bad. And like I was saying, any time that you can use a 6-point, you should use the 6-point because it's going to save you a headache from rounding off those fasteners and stuff. So having a 6-point is always nice. Nice tight tolerances on the fastener, and definitely less likely to round that fastener off if it's really stuck on there. So Tekton makes a good ratcheting wrench, double box end, and then these are the gear wrench extra long spline drive ratcheting wrenches. One side is just spline drive and the other side is ratcheting, and it's going to give you that extra torque you need for a fastener. But if you break a fastener loose, you want to use this side and then use the ratcheting side after that. Like I was showing you guys before, this is a 9/16 fastener, so this is a 12-point combination wrench, and you can see there's a little bit of play in there, which is fine. It's not so much that you're going to destroy anything unless it's really stuck. Same thing here, 13mm 12-point socket, you got a little bit of play in there. And then a 13 spline drive, you got a little bit of play in there, but you can use this on many different types of fasteners, whereas the standard 12-point is just for your 6 and 12-point fasteners. And then, like I said, this was a 9/16, and you have pretty good tolerances in here. And then this is a 14, and it has really nice tight tolerances in here as well. The corners of that fastener really get into the grooves or the teeth of the spline drive, and it's really nice to have. I know some people just don't care for spline drive. I haven't had an issue with any of my spline drive tools yet, so I really enjoy them. Please let me know what you guys think. YouTubers, in this video I went over 6-point sockets and wrenches, ratcheting wrenches, 12-point of both and spline drive of both. My suggestion, my personal opinion, if you have a different opinion, that's fine. Maybe some other things have worked better for you. But my personal opinion, if you're just getting into this field or you're a do-it-yourselfer, 6-point first thing is what needs to be purchased, because that's what you're going to have the most common use for, and it's going to work the best for not rounding off the fastener. 12 points being good for 6 and 12-point sockets, but you do run a little bit more of a chance of rounding off a 6-point fastener with a 12-point. And then universal, I like them, personal opinion, but you also need to keep in mind the quality of the spline drive. If it's a cheaper one or it has loose tolerances, you might not like them so much because they are going to round off fasteners. But if you get a good quality set, I think a majority of people would actually kind of like them because they're useful for many different types of fasteners. So I find that very useful. As you guys saw, companies also make different designs of 6-point sockets. If you get a cheaper set, you might find that the points just come to a straight triangle, whereas your better versions, whether they're impact grade or chrome, kind of have a rounded corner to them to help grab the fasteners. Also, you find manufacturers that have anti-slip type sockets, which basically they vary from manufacturer to manufacturer, whether it's that extra slit in the socket or it's got a spiral to it for those rounded off fasteners and things like that. But if you're going to go that route, that's going to be later on, especially if you're in the automotive field, you're going to come across those crappy situations where those are going to be very useful. But for your average do-it-yourselfer and beginner, focus on those 6 points and you should be good. Then later on, maybe decide whether you need to get 12-point or spline drive. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you guys enjoyed. If you found this useful, please make sure to hit that thumbs up. Leave a comment down below. If you guys have used spline drive, let me know what you guys personally think of them and what you prefer. And as always, subscribe if you're not a subscriber. Thank you guys.